Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Roberts. I'm here with my fabulous friend and co host,
Quodicia Johnson.
and we have returned yet again for another episode of Taking the Stage with Christian.
And Quo. As we start every episode, we will begin with a land and people acknowledgement because it is important in the work that we do. It is important in truth telling, and it is important in how we work together to heal and move forward in this beautiful work. So, I do want to take the time right here, right now in this space to acknowledge that we in Dallas are on stolen land. We are on the land of the Cattle, of the Wichita, and of the Comanche sovereign nations, nations of people who face horrible conditions, including genocide and policy that allowed for the forceful removal from their land by any means necessary. Nations of human beings who live the full human experience. Nations of people who are still here, whose voices are still immeasurable, whose voices are still needed in the work that we are doing. I also want to take the time to acknowledge that people were stolen from their homes and brought here and forced into free and enslaved labor. And from that free and enslaved and stolen labor, we have what we enjoy as Dallas. Dallas is not alone in this, as the entire nation benefits from stolen land and stolen labor. Again, we acknowledge this land, we acknowledge the people who built the land because it's important in the work that we do and it's important in the stories that we carry forward as we have the honor, the privilege, the responsibility, and the opportunity to heal and move forward together. So I thank you for joining me and Christian for this land and people acknowledgement.
And of course, as always, we thank you for joining us each and every week to hear us discuss these topics that are, quite prevalent in our day to day lives right now, things that are affecting us, things that have been in place that have affected us, many of us, and how we, as a people, as a nation, as a world, are going to contend with these issues. As an industry, how we will continue to contend with these issues. As always, a shout out to the Dallas Opera staff, senior leadership. Thank you all so much for your continued support. And also, as usual, a shout out to our friend and brother, David Lomeli.
Hey, David.
We miss you, our dear friend. And so, Quo, let's jump in today. Let's dive right on in. Um, Quo named this episode The Pause,
The pause.
and there is a reason for that. In our past few episodes of the past couple of months, we have discussed the whole getting back to normal thing that people are doing right now that people are getting vaccinated and things are opening up. um, we are able to go back to our traditional stages. We are making headway on our digital stages through this
Mhm.
through this pandemic. All these things that we're so extremely excited about as an industry, things that we have learned over this past year and now some months, in additional months, all the things that we've learned over this past year. But we wanted to talk about the pause because there are a lot of things going on in terms of not getting rest. That's the best way I can describe it. And going back into quote unquote normal. We had an episode earlier on titled "There Is No Going Back" to,
Mhm.
basically to normal, because we all have been forever changed
Yes.
by what has happened. And so that's first of all on a human level, that we have been changed as a globe of people, as a world. And the expectations that we are now placing on ourselves, I believe we have to be very careful as we are moving into this new iteration, because we still have a pandemic going on. COVID is still very real. There is still racial injustice going on. There is still um, we definitely have seen things going on in our society right now. Just a lot of things, job loss, and us trying, and people trying to get back into the workspace, trying to get jobs. Period. There are so many things that are happening to us as human beings right now, especially here in the U.S. where we are, where there are a lot of people that are getting vaccinated, and states are able to open up and do more things. Um, so we bring this up for one reason. One big reason, which we'll give many few reasons under that, but the biggest thing is normal wasn't so great. When we go
Hmm.
back into that default of normal, there's a danger in that we will go back to the old habits. We will go back to traditional methods of doing things that did not benefit us. And I say that in our own industry, but also in our society in general. And as we work to move toward um, getting back on our stages and getting back into our offices and getting back to our lives, if you will, I I personally, and I talked this over with Quo. It is I think it's very important right now as we do these things that we don't rush back in full on.
Hmm.
Um, and not saying that there's not business to handle, that we are not running businesses and all of that, but I'm also thinking about people,
Hmm.
and the human beings that make up our organizations, the people that are on our stages, the people that are in our pits, our board members,
Yeah.
just our people, humanity. um, and when you go through a collective trauma like this, a big gigantic trauma, there is a fallout. And when I say going back into something so quickly, I have concerns, and I know Cole has expressed concerns for this as well. And so I will stop talking and let her weigh in on this as well. But that's what I have to say about that. I would just encourage, our artists and our arts administrators, our boards, our leaders, senior leadership team, staff. I mean, everybody. Just, we need to make sure we take this pause so that we do not default into things
Hmm.
that were not beneficial before the pandemic, and what we and really try to apply some of the things we've learned about our own humanity within our organizations, um, as people. I mean, really, as people,
As
we need to
people. Yeah.
carry some of that forward as we continue to do the job of bringing opera to the stage and working in our communities. But that also means our communities within our offices and on our
Hmm.
stages.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to the people who are responsible for executing, these performances, and jobs that support these administrative work that support the performances and such. So that's my tangent. Quo, what are your thoughts?
I completely agree. And everything that you've shared and what you've shared so beautifully, in that as we're looking at going back to traditional stages and making sure that we incorporate elements and lessons that we've learned along the way, especially within the since the onset of the pandemic and how it hit the United States, right? Um, it is so important that we also acknowledge that some people never really had the chance to stop. That is something that we've discussed, in that right now as we're looking at getting to a new normal, right? Maybe not the getting to a new normal right now is a time, again, things are kind of open. People have been vaccinated. People are more comfortable with being in crowds. People are taking time, needed time, of course, to rest, or taking time to get away, taking time to take vacations, things like this, to to travel, all these things. Not everyone is in the space to do that. And as we've shared when we talked before, everyone's time off is not the same. Because of the system that we are in, we do not always have the access to the same types of environments, the same types of experiences that uplift our humanity. For some, taking time means going to travel and doing nothing and unplugging. For others, it may look like having to work that second job, or having to fix those things, having to take care of illnesses that have been put off. So it's important that as we're looking at moving into kind of this next phase, which is a very big phase, that we pause, that we take that time, right? This is not intermission. We take that time. You sit here.
Mm-hmm.
You sit here, and we wait, but as we sit, we contemplate. We think of the things that have come up, the things that have bubbled to the surface, and that we commit to processing those things. We commit to actually taking the time to pause, to see what has happened with our organizations, what is happening with the people within our organizations to see the inequities, to see the disparities in the ways that we're having to continue to move forward because it's still there. And as organizations who are made of people and as organizations who are committed to people, it is so important that we acknowledge those differences, that we pause, and even as we honor those differences, we start to dismantle the system that says that those differences have to be permanent or that those differences just have to be dealt with and you just kind of have to suck it up and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
People are navigating what it's like to be back in offices and things like that. I encourage everyone, right? We did this episode so that we can talk to everyone and talk with everyone about the different options that we have because we have options as we're going back into offices, as we are continuing again performances. Some did not stop, some employees and some departments did not have the opportunity to stop. Shout out to to those departments, right? To education, to community, to finance. Nobody ever gives love to finance. Love to finance. To development in these different ways that people have had to continue the work and do not always have the opportunity to pause. So there's a layer within the departments, there's a layer within identity, there's a layer within resources, there's a layer within location. All of these things, we have to pause, we have to assess, we have to process what happened before this moment, before we fully move back into the next phase, before we fully move on to like this next part of this act, or before we fully unveil the next scene, if you will. And so we wanted to have the opportunity to bring it to light, to say something, and to let everyone know that as we pause, it is okay to truly take a pause, however long that needs to be, because we've already defaulted. We've already defaulted
Yep.
back into bigger and progress, and that means better, right?
Mm-hmm.
More, it bit better is more, better is bigger, right? And we know that that's one of the cultural characteristics of white supremacy culture, and that if we did this well, then we should do more, and we should make it bigger, and we should do it more frequently, or we did this well, and this is how it works, so we should just head right in. And we're seeing that people are not taking the time that has been given or that has been afforded for those who can rest to actually assess and make informed decisions. And then we're seeing that people are not receiving time, right? Some have been given
Mm-hmm.
time and have the time to take and are not really using it to assess and kind of learn and see what is happening. Others are not receiving the time. And so there's this concept of everything is just pushing forward and everything is still going without us actually taking the time to say that happened. This is what went well. This is what can be improved. This is what we want to make sure we never do again.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we never want to find ourselves once more, especially not in the same ways. These are the conversations we would rather not have, or we want to not have anymore, because these are the things that we've learned. So, as you shared, Christian, it's as we pause, it's so important that we take the pause, that we commit to it as an organization, that we commit to it as an industry, that we learn, that we look at what we've learned, and then that we remain kind of open and that we remain flexible in how we start to apply those practical things that we've learned, the practical things that have been shared through the show, and the conversations that have happened just throughout the industry. So that's my spiel on
Mm-hmm.
why we named it the pause, but what we need to do in the pause, right? Commit to
Yep.
pausing, and then what we need to do as we pause.
Well, and I think you said, we assess, we know in especially in education and community engagement, we know it all too well. We find ways to assess our programs with surveys and getting
Mhm.
feedback, and we're always trying to find clever ways to get feedback, that we can use to improve and this sort of thing. And I think this is the time, that we assess our year as our industry and as our companies and all these different things, and have a real open dialogue about how we intend to move forward. It's easy to do that when it's easy to talk about things and stuff, and I say easy very loosely because I know subjects There are subjects that are not easy to talk about, but it's easy to talk about things when you are stopped. And many as an industry, we were stopped. We weren't stopped in every way. You know, we hit our digital stages. We did virtual programming. We did a lot of stuff. We proved that we can make it
Hmm.
through this. You know, we went outside. We did all kinds of things to keep the art form going in some sort of way. But what I mean is that those hard conversations that we wouldn't have had time for if we were in full on production mode, full on season mode, all the things that we do, we had time this year to do that. And so the thing that Quinn and I've been talking about is, you know, like I said in the beginning of this episode, don't the rushing back in. We need to
Hmm.
take time to assess. Okay, I mean, we have proven that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and so I believe this is another yet another thing that we could do. And you know, the way in which you do that assessment is the same way you would approach assessment for one of your programs. You Cole was talking about, take the time to acknowledge what happened, and what's still happening. Look at what worked, look what did not work, that sort of thing, what you want to keep, what you can improve,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And then you have to develop a plan, because that's what you have to do in order to change things. And then you have to be flexible within that plan,
Right. And then,
considering the state that we are in the society. This year proved that we had to be this past year proved that we had to be flexible, and we
yeah.
had to adapt to an ever-changing situation. And this is no different. And so the ways in which we do that is something that Quote says on this show all the time. The first thing is centering truth, and part of that truth is something really horrible happened and
Hmm.
tough happened. Like,
Hmm.
we haven't gone through something like this before, in our lifetime. It
Hmm.
affected everybody. It didn't affect
Yeah,
everybody
everyone.
the same way, but it did affect everybody.
Yeah, everyone.
So,
Yeah.
Quote, in terms of developing a plan, because you do this a lot. You do it with Dallas Opera. You do this with other companies in terms of, like, the work you do with in equity. But in terms of developing a plan, in this pause, what sort of things should people be doing in this plan development, as they look forward to, making and keeping the necessary changes, that are vital for our organizations moving forward?
Again, you said it beautifully. And what it means to center truth. Centering truth also means being honest about whether or not your organization is in the space to have honest conversations. So acknowledging that truth can seem relative. We've always said there's your truth, and then there's that person's truth, and then there's
Then
the
there's
truth.
the truth.
But as opposed to live your truth, the truth. And
Because
what that
usually
means.
when it's your truth and my truth,
Hmm.
the truth comes together somehow
Right.
between those two situations. You know what I mean? So there's the truth. You'll find it once you get
You'll
them
find
together.
it. But collective truth, right? The truth.
Yes, the
And
collective truth.
it is necessary that the plan that is developed is inclusive, that this is an inclusive process. If your organization is not used to creating inclusive processes, if it's not used to listening to everyone and getting feedback from everyone, then that's a truth that needs to be acknowledged. And that's one of the things that can go into what it means to have a plan going forward. Because everyone was impacted and we continue to be impacted by this, it's necessary that we hear what is being said, that we know what is happening to the best of our ability, that we receive feedback and how decisions are impacting others within your organization. People want to be able to do their best work. We, of course, want people to do their best work. We have to create the conditions so people can do their best work. That means we have to listen to what they need. That's what equity is. And then that's where equity starts, right? And then it's putting in the additional steps to make sure that people are receiving what they need. So it's not enough just to listen and then to do nothing. The next thing you would need to do is truly sit, and you can try and prepare for change. Everybody thinks they're ready for change until it actually
Mm-mm.
comes and then we're fighting it,
Yep.
which is
Human nature.
natural. But embrace, like Christian said, embrace the flexibility that is necessary. Embrace change. That's what that means. Be flexible with the things that can be flexible, and then be honest about whether or not it's you fighting flexibility or just not wanting to do it. There's a difference. But the things that can change, embrace it and start to change. If you look and realize that you can start to hire people who work from home, which the entire disability community has been saying for a very long time, it's been proven. It's been proven. And what it looks like to start to embrace certain changes within your organization, to embrace certain changes within practices within your organization. You have to embrace it, and then you have to commit to it.
Mhm.
Create goals. These goals should be informed by those who are most impacted. It's not enough for just leadership to say, I want to do these things, these things, these things, without actually having conversations by those who will need to execute the work or those who will be impacted by the work. What we've learned is that when we stifle our creativity, we start to trap ourselves. And as I
Mhm.
say so often, we have an entire field that is dedicated to play and pretend. We have careers because we put a hole in the wall, we put a hole in
Yep.
the floor, or we go and find
We
a
dress up.
platform. We dress or go and find a platform somewhere since we were not in the houses over the past year. We go and find a platform somewhere and we tell stories.
Mhm.
We play pretend. We hear music and we decided to share that music with others. So it is important that we not stifle our own creativity. That includes the creativity of your staff.
Mhm. Yep.
That includes the creativity of your staff, which means that you have to have the environment for staff to feel confident, the psychological safety for your staff to be able to lean into their own creativity. Christian says it very often, not often in the show, but just trust people to do their jobs. She
Mhm.
says it all the time, and she does it very well. Trust people to do their jobs, but then also make sure that we're valuing the input of those who are doing their jobs, who have been doing their jobs. As we're again moving into kind of this next phase, which will be followed by yet another phase, we have to be flexible, but we have to embrace change. We have to embrace flexibility. We have to commit to doing the work. We've had conversations, and again, we're already defaulting back into this process that dehumanizes people. Because
Mhm.
as we're hearing on some end, oh, you should take vacation, you should rest, you should do these things. On the other end, we're not acknowledging that some people cannot or feel that they cannot or are in places where they're not able to do so for financial reasons. We have to look
Yes.
at that as an organization, what it means when our people cannot do their best work. We have to look at that as an industry and what it means when people feel that they cannot pause to assess, pause to breathe,
Mhm.
pause to contemplate and to reflect on what they've experienced thus far, and then pause so that we can actually come out stronger for it once we move kind of into this next phase or this next scene, if you will. So those are the things that we want to make sure people know, the
Mhm.
steps that we can take and what we're doing and the ways that we have to make sure that we're committing to the work, but the ways that we also understand how we measure the work. And that measurement has to, again, be inclusive. Setting those metrics once we have the space to make sure that we can have real conversations, creating those metrics for whether or not we're being successful in what we're doing. That has to be an inclusive process. And it also has to be a flexible process. We have to create the environment and the ability, the skill to respond, to things that we learn. And not so much in a way of being defensive or this is not true, all these things, but to take them as learning opportunities, to take them as opportunities for growth, and then to take them for opportunities of reflection and opportunities for us to own our own experiences as well. So those are my thoughts in what it means to develop a plan. Of course, give yourself a timeline. We know the SMART goals, right?
Oh yeah.
Make sure it's measurable, make sure it's attainable, all of these things. Give yourself a timeline, but center it in truth, center it in connection, center it in humanity, because that is what we're navigating right now. Yes, we're navigating, making sure keeping our doors open, making sure we get back to the stage, make sure that we are safe, but we are navigating humanity. So let's make sure that as we create this plan, we do so in a way that uplifts and honors our humanity. Those are
Agreed
my thoughts.
100%. I will also add to this too, you know, we're in a creative field, creative industry. And that pause that you need to do, you have to take a pause to create as well. Creating this plan, creating the art, creating the calendars, the strategic plan, all the things that we have to do, we have to pause in order to be able to do those things. And the thing is, we know full well that as artists, as arts administrators, as people who work in a field that requires our imagination and our creativity to bubble up so that we can produce the art that we want to produce and the quality of art that we want to produce, we know we have to be in the headspace to do that. And you got to
Mm-hmm.
pause
Gotta
to be
pause.
able to create, you got to
Okay.
pause and sit quietly sometime to be able to do that. So remember, pause so that you can create. We are in the field where we create, okay, where we put stories on stage, we do storytelling, where we do visual arts, where we do all of these things, where we put it all on stage together. And in order to be able to do that, we have to bring our creative selves to the table, and we can't
Yeah.
do that if our brains are overwhelmed with other things and we're exhausted. So I would encourage that the
Yeah.
basis of our business requires that we pause.
That we pause, and the basis of our relationships with one another require that we pause.
That we pause.
That we pause and that we realize, as we're saying, oh, you should take time and make sure, oh, well, we're going to go do these things, that we understand that everyone does not walk through the world the same way because of
Exactly.
systems that dehumanize us. Let's not pretend like these systems don't exist. They do exist. Let's not pretend like they are not there. They are there. And so, even in this pause, there is an awareness that is required of all of us, but there is definitely an awareness that is required of those who find ourselves wanting to just kind of push forward so that we can command normalcy.
Hmm.
Let's be mindful that and committed to the fact that this new normal should not carry with it the same elements that created those disparities and those inequities before. Our field has seen what does not work. We have heard the cries of artists, of administrators, of communities saying this is not enough, but we've also heard the support and we've seen the beautiful creativity that comes from the communities, that comes from the artists, that come from the administrators. We don't get to keep pushing forward without taking a pause and really saying, okay, we
How are
hear
we going to
you.
bring this with us?
Yes, we
Because
hear
we
you.
know it
This is what we're
works.
going to do. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, we've given you a lot over the past year. We talked about this stuff a lot, but it's funny because this was an episode that both of us were kind of like, we need to talk about this, um, in different ways, and I really, really hope that it is received in the way that it was intended, and that is most definitely with love and concern, but also with motivation and excitement, for what is possible, if
Yeah.
we are able to if we are able to do, um, figure out what to do in the pause, develop that plan in this pause, and understand that a pause looks different for different people and
Yes.
different organizations and that sort of thing. We're
Hmm.
not saying that we were stopped for a year. We're saying a pause, a pausa, if you will,
The
not a full on
pause.
intermission. A pausa, just to stop and make sure that we remember what we've been through this past year, and to understand that we didn't go through that for nothing. First of all, and that we should take that forward, and use the things that work for that worked really, really well, and quite frankly, dismiss the things that didn't. But you have to decide, what that is for your organizations, for your individual selves, for your individual artistic,
Yeah.
uh, um, endeavors, all of those different things. But as, overall, for our organizations and for our industry, and quite frankly for our society and our world, it's something that we have to do. Diving back into quote unquote normal, we are all forever changed. That normal doesn't exist anymore. And so I say we embrace it, and move forward with it. And use this program. We're 60 episodes in by now.
Episode
This
60.
is episode 60. So you have a plethora of resources and people that we have talked to from our respective communities and all this type of stuff who have presented so many different perspectives on this show, and tools and ways to do this. And in Quo, you have an equity specialist that can walk you through this. I mean, I'm not an equity specialist, but I certainly try to run my affairs that way, and also try to, as a person that works in education and community engagement, and education and community engagement folks, I'm talking to you all too. You all know full well what we do on the ground and what we have to do. So it's really important. This kind of thing is really, really important for us because we're working directly with our communities. So we have to take a pause and assess. We do it all all the time with our
Yeah.
educational programming. So this should be an old hat for all of us. It's just doing it in a time that was just so unorthodox
Mhm.
for us, that we've never been through before. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague here for some positive notes. Quo, take it away.
Positive notes. As we are embracing the excitement of possibility, as we are embracing kind of that very nostalgic feeling, but also that kind of very anxious thing that comes with right before you get on stage.
Mm, woo, work
As
very well.
we're embracing, or for those who are not artists, right, what it means right before that presentation, or right before you unveil something new or you present something and you get it to the world, it is so very important that we do the work justice, that we
Mm,
do our experiences justice, that we do our preparation justice for those who have actually prepared, right? We can tell when you get on stage, Shannon. But for those who have actually prepared, we have to do our work and our collective experiences justice. And that requires that we lean into the excitement of the possibilities and the opportunities that will come from us taking a moment to acknowledge this being together, and then to create an opportunity for us to truly pause. Through that pause, we have such a beautiful horizon, if you will, of opportunities for all our organizations to truly become better at what we're doing, to truly create an environment where people can do their best work so that our best efforts are presented and created and co created with our communities. And that's a beautiful thing, of course. So, our positive notes for this, and that in this pause, you also get to relish in the things that you've learned. You get to
mm,
relish in the community and the communication that has been shared, but also the connection that has been created with one another. Pause. It's okay to do so. It's okay to
mhm.
pause. And it's okay to come out of this pause together and to come out of it better for it, which we'll all undoubtedly do as a field, as an organization, and then as individuals as well. And of course, as always, you don't have to do it alone. In what we're doing, none of us ever really do it alone. So take heart in that, honor that work, do the preparation, do our shared experiences, do our individual experiences justice, pause, and then come back better for it. Those are my positive notes.
Well, thank you, Quo. And folks, as I usually say, be bold, continue to be brave. Um, there are some people that didn't make it here. There are some people who are not here with us that did not make it here. So we are fortunate to be alive and still here.
Yeah,
Be open to the possibilities, and take some of take it and take some of the lessons that we learned over the past year and apply them, and use them for the good. Use some of this tragedy, turn some of this into something good. And remember, we're artists, we're arts administrators. We know the world needs us. That's not a brag or a boast, but art is everywhere.
yeah, it's
So
everywhere.
you're
It's
needed,
inherent. Yeah,
you're wanted. So remember that. Remember, you have a cause, you have a mission, and let's stay on that mission. And until then, until next week, we shall see you later. Peace out, people.
bye.